Welcome to Theorycraft. It's a weekly podcast where game developers and players engage in conversation. We usually talk about MMOs. We don't always. It's really kind of just about whatever's in the air. This week we will be going back over some of our own kind of past works and I think walking you all through them a little bit. So for anybody who's wanted a kind of day in the life of a game designer or an audio person, this is going to be the show for you. Let's just start talking about what everybody's been up to. Chris, how have things been going for you?
I don't know, not much news really. I went to the gym for the first time and since quarantine yesterday, and then I fucking pulled my lat, I think.
Really? Like already? You just went back
I was
and
just like,
started hurting yourself?
I'll just lift like what I used to lift, right? And
Yeah.
that wasn't a smart idea. Yeah, it kind of like hurt a little bit and it still kind of stings a little bit, but it's dulling out now. So not all of us can be the parkour Spider-Man heroes like you. So.
I mean, I probably devote like 2 hours of every day to just fucking stretching and recovery and what have you.
Really?
So
wow. Okay.
since you're working from home, it's kind of easy to just on breaks or in the morning, just like roll out a little bit, massage gun while you watch some bullshit news. It's very passive, but once you get used to that ritual, it's hard to not want to do it because as you get older, if you're doing activity, it turns out like kind of everything feels tight all the time. So why not? But that sucks, man. Yeah, that's kind of like one of the threats of going back to the gym at this point. You have to eat some humble pie and just accept that, you have to start out small again. For those who don't all know, actually, one of like the long invisible connections between the three of us is we were all in the Blizzard fitness group, right? Candace, you were too.
Yeah.
I know you left.
Yep.
So at different times.
Let's.
Yeah, we never really overlapped, but Blizzard had a really hardcore fitness community, and I think Chris like organized the Discord and maybe even the Slack, and there are a bunch of good people. There are some real superheroes in there, though.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, Discord didn't exist, and I created a Slack for it, and then eventually it moved to Discord because, of course, why wouldn't you?
It was really intimidating because it was just like the initial couple of people kind of like broke off from. There was like an official boot camp trainer that came. Those people are fantastic. I actually did a tour with them as well. But then they leave their equipment at Blizzard when they're gone, and they were like, "Can we just use this when you're gone?" And they were like, "Sure." So the first couple of people that started the Blizz Fitness group were super swole or like super fit, like Chris and a bunch of other people. And so like as a doughy like white girl, I like walk into this thing like I don't know how to do a like proper lifting. I don't know how to do anything. And like given there's also like that twinge of residual bro culture at Blizzard still, I was really intimidated, but actually like the fitness group, super positive, super encouraging, very helpful, very informative, like actual like good guys TM. So and a couple gals as well.
Super wholesome group of people on the whole. I found community there like immediately after starting, which is wild because it was like the unlicensed group. It was the rogue fitness group. Yeah, I still keep in touch with most of those folks. Well, good for you, Chris. I'm glad you're getting back up and out there. Everybody's put on a little bit of the quar chub, and it's just time to kind of start unloading.
I know. Yeah, it's totally. Yeah.
That's cool.
Also getting back to the keto. I love eating keto. I always feel like my mindset is always so much better.
Yeah. I can't follow you down that road. I've always just had bad experiences with it because I never pushed through the initial brain fog and feeling like I'm going to pass out all the time. I'm weak.
Sourdough bread. It's your superpower.
Is that on there? That's true. I can't give up the bread making or bread eating either, but
yeah, the keto and fasting is like the god tier combo. If you can handle it.
It's like the min-maxed passive weight loss plan for sure. Yeah. Sounds great. Candace, how have you been?
Doing real good. I'm almost caught up with my friends in Destiny. I think I have like 50 late levels to get before I can raid with them and stuff, so that's kind of cool. I, on the other hand, ever since I got my vaccine, I've been seeing like my personal trainer.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like there's two things that I need in order to feel whole, and I learned that when I didn't have them, I needed them. So one is like I need to leave the house and be away from my partner for at least like 30 minutes a couple times a week. And it's not like we fight or like we get in arguments or anything. It's just like life doesn't feel normal whenever it feels like quarantine time when we're together 100% of the, every day.
Mm-hmm.
So the two things that I choose to engage with are, yeah, my personal trainer. She's like at 24-hour fitness, but she's super dope. And then my therapist. And like those are, I leave the house 3 times a week for those things combined. And I feel like I still don't feel like life is not back to normal, obviously. Well, at least for me, I don't, I'll still do like hangouts on people's patios, but I still don't like to go to big crowded places or whatever. But the life is starting to feel more normal when I have, like my therapist listens to me talk about, my brain makes me feel heard, and then my personal trainer listens to my body. As weird as that sounds, but like if I'm aching on one day, she's like, well, here's how we're going to stretch and here's how we're going to, lift or whatever for that day. So it between those two people, like if I could recommend, and I know it's not like it's cost prohibitive for a lot of people, but if I could recommend anything, like having at least 1 month with a kinesiologist / personal trainer that will tell you like, hey, the way that you're standing right now, your hips are going to seize by the time you're 60, and you need to sit up straight or else your chicken neck is going to like, you know, you're going to slump forward your whole life, just to like correct the way that you stand and do things so that you don't injure yourself when you're older. I think it's worth its weight in gold. And I think it's only like, depending on where you live, like $500 to maybe $800 in a month to do it. So, but make sure they're not like coaches where they're just like, we're going to do fucking hella lifts today. And I don't know how to like correct your form really.
Yeah,
Like a
like
real
CrossFit.
kinesiologist, or is it kinesiologist, I think, is going to know like, well, if you're pulling from your front, then you're not using your back muscles, and here's how you even, whatever. So there's my rant.
Kinesiologist. Do you go to this Herald fellow? Is that like this like legend of the Blizzard Fitness group? There's like one physical therapist or some such that everybody talks about going to, and it's like this life-changing experience. That's not the same person, or is it?
No, I wish I didn't know about that person, but I'm sure it's similar where it's like you just learn so much about your body and how it
Mm-hmm.
moves and how you do it wrong your whole life. And yeah, no, she was just, I met her when I went to go sign up for the gym. Whenever I got my vaccination, they were like, we do a personal training session for free. Do you want to do it? And then she and I just were buds.
You
But
got
she's
hooked.
quitting actually, I think at the end of the month. And she's like, if I quit sooner than the end of the month, then I'll refund your whole month. And I was like, damn. So I'm
Wow.
like secretly hoping she quits just 1 week early.
Do you a favor. That's dope. I have never gone down the route of personal trainers. I get like just kind of really stubbornly frugal about some things. And, we live in the age of like, I can figure it out myself if I just Google enough stuff. And so I've never really gone with that. But I think I still have 2 free sessions at my gym that I've literally never used. And I wonder if it would be like an eye opener or not.
It depends on the trainer, but definitely like we started over. So I before all this, I was squatting like my first time at the gym. I went back, and of course, I lost some of my gains, my progress. But like I could squat like 95 pounds. I think my PR was like 130 or something like that. And I could deadlift my own body weight, which was like 120, but I was back down to like 95, 100 or something like that. And then so I was showing her, I was like, here's the routine that I do. And she goes, okay, well, we're going to retrain you to do it because I don't pull with my lats or my back or my core or anything. She's like, you're pulling with just your knees and your chest and your shoulders, and you're going to die if you do that. And so it felt really bad to start over. I could hardly squat the bar. I could hardly squat 45 pounds when we started over. And I was actually using like my glutes and my core and not just my legs to lift. 2 months later, we're back at my normal lifting weight. And I'm pretty sure I can blitz right past it now that I'm actually using
Yeah.
more than one muscle group.
Oh, that's so good. It feels so nice to learn form and correct muscle memory like that. That's huge. Even though you do have
Welcome
to
to
kind of go
Theorycraft,
back down for a bit. Yeah. Yeah.
the nutrition and health podcast.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well,
Sorry. How's you, Luca?
no. To move it along. Okay, I'll give my health news. I was feeling a bit of the twinginess lately, and I went to every once in a while for like a tune-up. I go to some like sports therapist that does like some kind of what's it called? It's like intramuscular needling, basically. It's kind of like bro sciencey acupuncture. Anyways, they find tight spots. They stick a needle in there. Your muscle kind of starts quivering involuntarily, like a trapped jellyfish trying to escape or something. It feels really fucking weird. It's like that scene in Prometheus, but but it feels good after it's done. If there are some like knots that you kind of can't get out. So I did that yesterday, which greased the wheels. I've been lifting a bunch the last couple of months with a friend. We kind of remote coordinate and send each other workout logs. It's very wholesome. But yeah, you got to take precautions these days. Otherwise, news with me, like I haven't really been playing any games lately. I'm going to bring this up because you talking about needing a half hour a day away from your partner reminds me of an episode of a TV show I've been watching a lot of lately, which is Ted Lasso.
Oh.
So just like Gush moment, everybody's been talking about this show for a while. I feel like I'm completely just off the boat that I probably missed last year. Like with Schitt's Creek, discovering it late too. But God, what a fucking ray of sunshine this show is. Like all of it feels so good. And it's just written so cleverly and with so many callbacks. And I'm probably going to honestly end up going through the episodes again with a friend pretty soon. But it's great.
Yeah, I'll check it out. I haven't. It's on Apple, right? You have to.
Correct.
The Apple service. Got it.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. I'll check
it is on.
out.
Yeah, it's like their big spearhead offering that seems to be pulling people over. I don't know what the value proposition of Apple TV is, like, kind of besides it. All I'll say is I'm managing to watch it, and it's been great so far. So, but like I'm all caught up, and so now I'm in that kind of shitty place where I have to wait for the new weekly episodes, like everybody else. Yeah.
How many episodes are there total?
There's like 10 in a season.
14?
Is it?
Maybe 15? Yeah, there's 10 in a season. I think we're on like episode 4 or 5 of the second season now, right?
Oh, no. They're up to like episode 8. So.
Oh, no.
Yes. There's still more to come. I know there's a lot of meat there to chew on. But yeah, a lot of great stuff. Okay. I feel like we're going to really want to dig into the topics today. So I'll try to hustle this through. All right, so I listed off a couple things that happened in game news this week, and I don't know which of these you all feel the most passionate about. So let's lightning round, I'll go through, and if either of you two have a strong opinion or I do, we'll just start talking. So the Epic versus Apple decision.
Yeah, I mean the Epic versus Apple decision, it seemed like it still seems sort of like Apple won this, but Epic got one thing, which was you could just purchase things on the App Store with a different vendor or payment service or whatever it is, way of purchasing other than just Apple's, which, it's not many developers really are going to do that because the UX of just using Apple Pay for everything is just so great. And that's what's so great about the App Store.
So does Apple still take their cut if you end up going through one of these third-party things? Like, because that would be a complete and total victory from what Epic was pushing for. Is it like Epic could let you spend Fortnite money on items and you could not use Apple Pay, you could use a credit card and go through Epic's payment processing, but they still have to pay, however many percent is 30 to Apple? Like they're not getting around that by using their own. Okay.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So it's really just you can refer people outside to like less streamlined payment platforms than Apple Pay if you really want to.
And there's not that many other gaming platform payment services. There's like this one called Xsola that like I think Escape from Tarkov uses. So, I mean, they may get a lot more customers and use on the App Store now, but we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. But yep, so it kind of seemed like a huge win in the beginning, but just kind of turned into like,
I'm not a lawyer, and that probably explains why I'm surprised that this managed to go anywhere in Epic's favor, honestly. I felt pretty cynically like it was just going to kind of shut down, but it is a chip, So that feels significant, even if it's not financially swinging anything around right now. Did you all have any faves from the Sony Showcase last week? Like, I don't use consoles at this point. I don't have them. So I wasn't really keeping an eye on it, but anything stick out to you all?
Yeah, I think it's pronounced Tachia. I'm not sure. But it's like a little exploration game, very wholesome. You can pet crabs. There's like
Wait,
this
what?
very loving animation of her bending down and petting a crab, which I was a big fan of. But it looks like a really relaxing game. It looks like it has like a magical spin to an exploration game. It's like almost purely exploration. It looks like, but it's in this like cute little fantasy world. Maybe on an island. I can't tell.
How do you spell
Looks
it?
really cute. TCHIA, I think.
Okay. Yeah, petting crabs sounds like something I want to do. So that is relevant to my interests. That's cool. Oh, and it's underwater. This is cute. Cool.
Yeah, it looks real wholesome.
Yep. That kind of Palia cozy space that we all seem to be seeking these days. Refuge from the actual world. Chris, anything on your end?
I like the art in that Kina Bridge of Spirits game. Kina, is that how you say it? So that game looked cool. The art in it.
Like the obvious love for God of War. I mean, we're all gonna play it probably. So
Yeah.
That's a big boy.
It was funny because what's his name? The game dev that we always follow that we meme on.
Who, Jaffe?
Jaffe, yeah.
Yeah.
Jaffe. Yeah, Jaffe is just like, yeah, I just saw something of like so amazing, like the next Sony game or whatever, and I think he's talking about God of War, probably, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, looks good.
Yeah. I didn't see anything there, but in terms of new games coming out,
of course, there's a Skyrim in there too. Of course,
I mean,
for posterity.
I don't know. The worm turns on all of these like retrospectives and remakes, and we were just talking last week about how it doesn't seem like people are fatiguing in the game space. And while editing that and listening to you say that, I suddenly clicked over to, you know what? I think I am starting to get fatigued because like randomly I just start getting recommended, like. This is the 10-year anniversary, I guess, of Human Revolution, Deus Ex coming out. And I'm starting to, in my feed, because of my interests, getting a whole bunch of just like 10 years later, Deus Ex Human Revolution, looking back, like a retrospective. And there's just so many video essays out these days. And I feel like the great majority of them, like, what are you going to say about something that's only 10 years old? Like, you're going to talk about what the game did. And it's like, it still feels very fresh to me. Like, it's not ancient history. So I don't know, let the past be the past for a bit. Speaking of immersive sims, though, I saw that Deathloop, the new Arcane game, just launched this past week. I don't know a lot about it yet, but a new immersive sim a la Dishonored and Prey to a degree seems like something I kind of want right now. So I may check that out soon because I played like I'll say like an hour of Mass Effect Andromeda last week, like I said I would to get started, and I'm not sure it's going to stick. So Deathloop might be it. But it's fucking $80 up here, and Canadian game prices are just...
Oh, man.
They're intimidating. I mean, if you do the conversion, no big deal, but like they don't convert my salary, if you get what I'm saying. So it's a struggle. That's that. Blizzard's getting sued again.
I didn't even see for what. What are they getting sued
So
for?
this looks like something that ABK, specifically the Workers' Coalition, through one or two other intermediaries is litigating against Blizzard for. So that surprises me. Like, I feel a bit cynical, but I didn't really think that the worker-driven movement was going to get a ton of traction once they sort of like hit their bullet points and shareholders calmed down. But it seems like it is having to do with intimidation, the discouraging of forming unions, and just like internal communication down to employees surrounding that and surrounding organizing. There's obviously been no result of it. It's notable that it is being filed and by this body of ABK, which I thought, was like kind of a loose coalition of Twitter folks with blue hearts and some developers that we know. And it really seems like that group is sticking around and starting to bear some teeth legally. So that's kind of cool. You love to see workers organizing in ways that really chart with some legal power behind them. So we'll see what comes out of that. But yeah, Blizzard can't manage to stay out of the news for a month without getting sued again. So I wonder what it'll be for next month. I'm starting to kind of fatigue about just reading the anti-Blizz news, but
I know
it needs to be worked through in its course. So
yeah, I mean, judging from the riot. Sorry, go ahead, Candace.
Oh, I was gonna say, think about it though, from somebody who, if you have a beef with Activision or Blizzard right now, their legal team is fucking busy.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have beef, it feels like now's the time. Like, first thing you do is you tell them, like, hello, I would like a settlement, or I'm going to take you to court. The second thing you do is the same day you tell Kotaku what your beef is.
Yeah.
And then that seems like a really easy way to just like bypass all the bullshit. Like, if they had their full legal team completely like ready and at the hilt, then I
Right.
feel like it might not go so well, but maybe now is the time to strike, and so maybe that's why we're seeing this.
That's
Mm-hmm.
true. They're having to fight on several fronts right now, so you're right. This is kind of the time to get at them. I think that is mostly it. Well, there was that PC Gamer article that Kevin brought up to us, and maybe we'll do like a full episode on this. But I thought it was interesting that it's this article. We'll link it in live chatting, or I guess Chris or Candace, you can, having to do with what just seemed kind of like open world fatigue with RPGs and checklists and groups of icons, and wanting to bring the
Yeah.
journey and the sandbox back to the open world. And it really held up Death Stranding as a great example of how, the routine movement of the game is where all the story is in that. And it was a great article, but I thought it was interesting that this Nesting Games company just announced that they were forming just like a day or two afterwards. After this article came out, I mean, obviously it's just pure coincidence, but these are some ex-Ubisoft devs, I think in Quebec City, that are leaving. Ubisoft is obviously famous for sandboxy icon collection type titles like Assassin's Creed and what have you. And they just came out and immediately started throwing shade at that style of open world game.
Yeah, I think Candace and I were just reading this, and I mean, I don't know if they're really throwing shade. They're just kind of like, yeah, we don't want to do like these. I mean, they're kind of like dogging on the model that they probably came from, and maybe they want to make things that are less open world icon collection. It's funny, I haven't really heard that term icon collection before, but I mean, it makes sense, but I haven't heard that yet. I guess, is that a thing that people call these games that? But
I would like to posit my opinion that you can say that you're innovating in a space and that you want to improve on something without saying that the thing that you're improving on is bad, right? If like, but we're so polarized right now as people, it's like, oh, if you say like, I'm gonna improve this ice cream by putting chocolate on it. It's like Candace fucking cancels vanilla ice cream or whatever. It's like, no, vanilla
yeah,
ice cream is goddamn amazing and it is the best base for anything. There's absolutely nothing wrong with vanilla ice cream. Also, I choose to add some chocolate to it. But what's funny to me is that like open world games used to not have icons, and that was a huge innovation space. When Assassin's Creed, Prince of Persia, they're like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make it easy. We're going to put so much shit on the screen. It's going to feel like this huge world, because many other games also had like huge worlds that you had stuff to do, but you just didn't know because you weren't told that it was there. They were hoping
hmm
you'd like stumble upon it, right?
hmm hmm
Um, and then so the innovation space, or if you think about it, like EverQuest versus like World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft's innovation space was like EverQuest had, I think, like the irony is that it was called EverQuest, and I feel like it maybe had like 1 to 200 quests that ship. And then WoW's like, well, fuck this noise. We're gonna guide you every step of the way. We're gonna put you on a quest. We're gonna tell you an epic tale, and you're not gonna have to do any of the guesswork because we're gonna take you from POI to POI.
hmm
And now the huge innovation space is like, wait, what if we got rid of the UI? It's like there's like ebb and flow. Time is a flat circle.
Totally.
So it's almost like if you want to go, like now you have to marry the two. You have to marry like the best of the most minimalistic UI, because I don't think you can break the addiction to UI, but you can do things that are more immersive. Anyway, so that's my opinion.
Yeah, I thought it's interesting. One game that I played, in the last couple of years that's super immersive, and we talk about this game a lot on this channel, on this podcast, and I know Kevin loves it a lot too. Is Tarkov, and Tarkov they have like no UI at all, and they kind of do that to enhance the immersion. And there's maps in the game, but you have to like buy a map from the auction house or vendor, and if you die, you lose the map and stuff like that. And even that map doesn't have icons on it necessarily of where all the things are at. When players play the game, they kind of have like a map on another screen that they use. So it's really kind of unavoidable for the developer to really kind of remove the iconness, But maybe there's something to just not having the icons overlaid in the game, And WoW, like they added something last expansion, I think, where it's like if you're on a quest, it has like a little arrow that shows you where the quest is, sort of thing, like overlaid in the UI.
The little
And I felt
diamond.
like that, yeah, and I felt like that was going too far. And I know like a bunch of mods have that and players use that, but you know, I just feel like the game totally changes when you start adding all that stuff in the game. You know, you stop like really thinking about the world and the gameplay space, and now you're just playing the UI. You know, and I don't know, it's tough because it's a dance between intuitive an intuitive experience versus immersion, right? So
This is a total tangent that we won't go into, but I think this way a little bit about subtitles in stuff that I watch now too, actually. I got very used to having subtitles on like all the time, and it feels good to take them off and remove the UI, so to speak, because then I can actually go back to getting immersed in like eye movements and body language and things that are not just like purely informational. Actors' performances, like reading subtitles doesn't feel like it would really strip a lot out of getting what, for example, a show is about, because the dialogue is the important piece, but it really is something else to just like look at faces. And I know this is not some big brain take, but it does feel kind of like a UI intrusion / convenience that I also have trouble backing down from. But I probably just need like a less noisy apartment, honestly.
I really wonder about that too, because I also, around the time I started dating whoever I was dating in 2016, he watched TV with subtitles on, and at first I thought it was obnoxious, and now I'm at the point where you're at, where it's like I would rather watch something with subtitles in case I miss what somebody said.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how much of that is do production teams not care about the like crystal quality, enunciation, articulation, and understanding of dialogue? Like, is this being like lost under a layer of background noise, or is this being not produced enough to be crystal clear? Or like, so is it like the TV show's fault, or then is it the TV's fault? Like, are TVs just like shittier with sound because I like have a pretty nice sound system, or is it me where I just can't understand people now because I've crippled myself
Yeah.
by watching with or like is it all of the things?
I think it's
And
everything.
or and this is what blows my mind. I literally talked to my therapist about this. She's like, "Well, what if this is like you again?" Basically, she was like, "What if you just care more about understanding the dialogue since you turned on subtitles? And what if like you were just okay with missing a word for every now and then before you started reading subtitles?" And then that blew my mind. It's like maybe that's it.
Huh.
Maybe sometimes like you miss something and you ask your partner like, "What did you just say?" Or you're just like, "You know what? I'm going to use context clues to solve this puzzle, and then I'm not going to care about it."
Yeah. Maybe you're watching the show wrong, and
Yeah.
you're
That's
playing,
really
you're playing the
interesting.
meta.
Like I hardly ever watch movies or anything with subtitles. Even sometimes foreign films, I'll just watch it without the subtitles, even though I don't understand the language. I don't know why, but that's interesting. I never heard that perspective of watching stuff with subtitles.
Don't do it. Don't ever start. You're our audience that we get to test, like A/B test against now.
Yeah, because a lot of like film, and a lot of film today too is they have to make the movie and the screenplay and whatnot for all these foreign audiences, and so a lot of the hyper nuanceness of say an American film is sort of shaved off because they need to someone in China or in Africa or wherever will not really understand like the slang or the sort of micro cultural stuff in America. And so it's become very kind of generic now. And so now you don't even like really, I mean, you can infer kind of what's going on based on the body language and what's going on in the scene,
You know what? Okay.
Everybody chiming in chat makes me feel like this is just like some gradual decline of like dialogue mixing, which
Dude.
yeah, I don't know if I want to subscribe to, because that's like throwing fellow, audio folks under the bus. But I will say that what I think it is personally is that my attention has just gotten way worse. And to understand dialogue in situations where you can't really hear everything requires you to really pay attention. But if you watch somebody's lips and, like you were saying, pay attention to all the contextual clues, you can get what's going on. You know, real life doesn't have a subtitle, and it's often noisy and bad. I'm wondering if subtitles is just my way of kind of like working less hard to try to get information out of what I want to watch, you know?
There's two things I wanted to mention. One, I just remember that, you know how when you watch movies from the 90s, their lips don't really match or sync what they're saying because they like the typical process was to dub back over with
They'd
the
ADR
words.
it, yeah.
And so I wonder if this is actually like a technology thing where they're like, you know what, we don't need to do dubs anymore because our technology is good enough to pick up your voice and people can generally understand you. But really, like, it's not as crystal clear as someone going over and voice acting over their own acting. Like maybe it's a process change in Hollywood also. And then the other thing I was going to say was like, this is funny because the same argument you're making right now about like watching the faces and enjoying the dialogue and stuff like that is like it's one to one with the gameplay UI. I know you said like it's
Yes.
just like the same thing. You already made that connection, but it's just so funny. Like everything you just said also applies to the like the UI presence of stuff in video games. It's just really funny.
Yeah, like reading tells from monster animations and stuff instead of watching a UI indicator, you know? Like,
And it makes me wonder also if that means that like we're so spoiled to the subtitles or the you know the graphical overlay or whatever, and like is it even something the audience will crave to go back to, or rather it I think it's pretty obvious that people do crave to want to do things intrinsically and not because the UI told you to do it. But also I wonder how much of that is like where's the line? Where is it we draw the line of like the UI helping you? Because because we've had UI for so long now, we can't just like do away with it. Or if we do away with it, then you have to really fucking love the game that you're playing.
Yeah. I mean, UI is a really great topic we should do one time. Because, I mean, Blizzard has this design principle, show, don't tell, which means, like, you know, just show them through the gameplay or what's going on at the game and less so about, like, telling them with, like, pop ups and tooltips and text and stuff like that. Which actually, it comes from film. Like, show, don't tell comes from cinematography. Like, if you go to film school, it's a principle that you're taught. You know, the show don't tell in the scene. You know, don't say like I'm gonna. You know, a character doesn't say I'm gonna kill you, yada yada. You just show it through, you know, body language and things that how the character's motivations, right? So
yep. This is a hole that I would love to go down at some point, but we are starting to run a bit long.
we are.
Yeah. So let's have you two kind of game designers go first here. Chris, you brought up wanting to share just some past things that you've specifically designed and kind of just walk through your thought process a little bit on it. But I think maybe Candace should kick us off because, as somebody mentioned in chat, the Mage Tower is super current right now. And again, I don't want to like twist your arm to talk about encounter design on this thing, but like we went over what a fan I was of all the Mage Towers last week. And so if you did want to talk about it, that would be super cool. I just don't know how much insight like players actually have into how that thing came to life. You know, it has become like a real fan favorite in the rear view. And I guess I'm just kind of wondering like how you're feeling about it, how you thought about it, why you were working on it. You know, did you have any idea?
Chris and I were kind of talking about this before, but like the first thing that I want to mention is that when you work on a game like World of Warcraft, one, like the road has been paved for you, right? The golden loop of the game is already in. There are systems like combat and talents and gear and all the things that like make the game great. And so anytime you're adding like content to a game, you have to pay the homage, right, to the people who have laid the foundations for you. And so in that, because like no game, I mean, some games are made by one person, but mostly they aren't. And so like, then that moves into like, well, you can still have a great idea that innovates on a game that someone has laid the foundation for, right? And it feels good to lay claim to those ideas, you know, like, well, I had the idea of doing Timeless Isle, which I didn't, my friend Jeremy did, but like, I had the idea to do like whatever, like choose your own adventure bosses where you can choose what abilities they have. Like that was kind of, maybe that was my idea, maybe it wasn't. And so it feels good as a designer for like your ego to say, I had this idea and look at what it became. But then the second half of that sentence is so much more important. Look at what it became. Because one, an idea some of them can be visionary, but an idea is a dime a dozen for the most part. You can have ideas constantly. Some ideas can be really good, some ideas can be really bad. Bad in context. I don't think that any idea is actually like ever like 100% bad. Um, but the execution of that idea and like all the decisions that are made to bring that idea into fruition, again, on a game like World of Warcraft, takes VFX artists, UI artists, sound design, fucking there's it's like such a concert of efforts to bring something into a full like AAA experience that even if you do have the idea of it, I still say like you can only take 20% of the credit for it
Right.
because there's so many things involved in the execution, including all of the foundation of the game that enable this idea to kind of work. And so, but then the other side of that coin is like, so one, like you are hoisted on the shoulder of giants in a game like World of Warcraft, and so you're pretty poised to succeed. And then two, look at what it became. Also means what did the community do? Did the community adopt it? Did they have a good time? Did they treat each other well? Did they make friends? Did they, did it spark a theory crafting group? Like all these things that we consider to be pro-social also comes from the audience. So you have to give like a huge, so like 20% of the fucking outcome, replies depends on the audience
Yeah,
and
totally.
the way that they receive it. So, anyways, all that aside, when people say like, "Oh, did you work on the Mage Towers?" I say like, "Yes." It was like it's way harder to say like, "Let me tell you what all of my ideas were and exactly what I did personally to make it work." So that's why I don't like to ever lay claim to an idea because if I were to do that, like one, it would be exhausting for me to even remember every single decision I made, but two, like it's kind of disingenuous. Even I can't say I did all of the encounters because I didn't do all the encounters, but one of the encounter designers that made one of the encounters was very junior, and so a lot of his ideas a lot of his ideas were my execution and a lot of my ideas were his execution, right? So that's really like the line is really blurred there. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so I kind of wanted to talk about like things that I've worked on without necessarily saying like this was me because I don't
Yeah.
think that that's ever really genuine for one, and also I don't think that it serves anybody.
I think within games, people know this. I mean, if you're applying for a job and you submit a reel of some of your sound work, for example, and like it would be very difficult unless you did the entire game yourself to capture a stretch of time where it's like the only sounds playing are, for example, yours. So, if there's like a giant firefight that happens and you did this one special ability and like one of the types of guns, but there are other types of guns in play, and there's ambience and there's musical implementation changing and voiceover callouts and whatever. Like you have to heavily disclaim when you're submitting that reel to somebody applying. Like within games, I think people know that no one person is like just responsible for a feature,
Right. But on the forums and on Twitter, fucking one person is in charge of all of the things that you hate, you know? So anyways, I thought it was important and kind of responsible to
No,
mention that
that's
like,
great to point out.
but I can also, I mean, to turn the pillow around to the cool side of the pillow, I can also say that like, well, the experience as a whole, whereas there were dozens, if not hundreds of people involved in the experience as a whole, we all came to the consensus that this was the experience we wanted. And so I can say like, no, the experience of the Mage Tower was also, I also had a hand in that, right?
Yeah.
And so without giving credit to anybody or with giving credit, I don't know let's see, what do we want to talk about? Do we just want to talk about like why the Mage Tower was successful, we think,
I mean,
or just talk
anything.
about the
I mean, I
design of
think you
it?
could just talk about one of the encounters that you did and how you designed it, or you know, ways that you changed it and thoughts on it and postmortem, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's some
problems you
pretty
had with what did you call them earlier? For God, it was like damage profiles. Is that what you said?
yeah. So
Okay.
one of the tough challenges at the beginning was like if you think about artifacts in Legion, the artifact was trying to serve two purposes. One was to be like the system of the expansion, right? Where like this is your alternate advancement system. And but two, it's supposed to make you feel like you're a badass, right? You have this fabled weapon of legend, and only you, the hero, could have done it, right? And then everyone that was your class. But like It was trying to make you feel like this is something special, something powerful, and that was hard to do because with that comes wanting, or rather the desire to make people earn it, right? Like it wouldn't feel cool if someone just like first day of the expansion walks up and says like tosses Ashbringer at your fucking feet and was like, "Congratulations, I guess you're the goddamn Ashbringer." You know, like you wanted to make it a little like one, you wanted the story payoff of like why is Ashbringer here? Two, like why was I the one that was chosen? And so with that comes the desire to make the player feel powerful and make them kind of like do something challenging to earn it. But again, like then you have to think of the duality of it, which is this has to be the system that literally everyone has to engage with in the expansion or else they don't get to do anything. So you can't make it hard, right? You can't make it incredibly challenging to get their artifact in the first place. So with that said, like the way the artifact scenarios work, I mean some people figured this out, is like they were actually tuned to be more on the challenging side, but that
Sorry, the
they didn't
Mage
feel,
Tower scenarios, not the
yeah,
artifact
no,
scenarios.
no.
Okay,
I'm actually
okay.
talking about the acquisition
Oh,
of the
the
artifact,
acquisition.
and
Okay.
I'll get to that in just a second. But like, we can't let you lose, right? You have to get your Ashbringer if you're going to start the expansion. So like those scenarios actually like nerf themselves over time if you're not winning. They're there to tell you a story and they're not really there to challenge you. But at the same time, we wanted it to feel like a little bit meaty, which is really hard also because the player could have walked in at like the expected item level, or they could have skipped 2 expansions and been like 200 item levels low, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
was a tuning fiasco there. That said, we still wanted to make you feel like there was something special about you, even though we couldn't, like the right place to put that is not at the acquisition of the artifact. So I think that's where the Mage Tower itself came into play. So there was somebody who in their design for like patch content said, what if we made something kind of like a mini AQ war where the players can decide between 3 options or whatever, or however many options. Like the players can all invest in something and then turn on some benefit for the whole server, which is like one idea and one nexus of work. And then another one was like, well, hey, what if we were able to give you like that challenge that we wanted to give you and make you feel like you are the fucking Ashbringer, right? We want to give you something like cosmetic because it's solo play or whatever. And it was kind of like timeless through like 3 patches of content. And so that's where like that was the genesis of the specific things that you unlock with it wasn't just the Mage Tower. What was that system called? Warfront? Warfront? No.
No,
The Broken Isles thing?
you mean the thing where you just go in there and do little trials? God, what is it thing
No, I'm
called?
Proving
talking about
Grounds?
the
No.
system.
Proving
No,
Grounds. Yeah.
no, I meant the system that what unlocks that like you had to do something so
The
that the
whole
Mage
Broken
Tower was
Isles.
unlocked.
Yeah, the whole Broken Isles campaign. And
Yeah, that.
then, yeah. The
Sorry, it's been
scenario.
a while.
There's a long chain
Um,
and then you can contribute. Yeah.
and then there was like I forget what the third option was there, but so of the Mage Tower Nexus, then it became like then a bunch of other people decided like, well, okay, what are the coolest like versions of the skins that we can make of the, artifact and make people feel like real badasses. And then another person had the idea of, well, what if well, actually it was kind of born out of necessity as well, which was why do players care about this after Legion after they won't have their artifacts, presumably? Like if we give up the artifact, then why do you care about doing this, et cetera, et cetera? And
Mm-hmm.
so should you even be able to do this? Like and then so the idea of it being limited time was kind of like problem solving.
You were thinking about it being a limited time thing very early in the design process, you're saying? Like that was part of the Mage Tower design from the beginning. It wasn't just you released it and then someone decided, hey, these aren't going to be balanced. Once we get to 8.0, we should probably shut them down.
Oh, it wasn't actually about the integrity of the encounter. It was just
Okay.
more like if there is this thing that exists in World of Warcraft forever now, and the reward is something that is no longer applicable to you because you no longer have an artifact, then what? Right?
Oh, I see. Yeah. It's like a lore reason to clamp the challenge to the set expansion because it relates to the artifact. That makes sense to me. I mean, it's
Yeah.
coming back now, but we'll forgive that. I get it. So this is kind of like this
But
is
that
it-
ended up
yeah.
good.
No, I just wanted to make a Matrix analogy because I can't ever avoid doing that. So it's like if getting your artifact is Neo telling Morpheus, I know Kung Fu, then the Mage Tower is when Morpheus says, show me.
I also want to like caveat, like I wasn't in the room when all of these decisions were made, so I could be getting this slightly wrong, but this is my impression, right?
Mhm.
And so that little like tidbit of you can't get it after Legion is over is what drove like the the community into like like wanting to do this before the expansion was over, and B or and two whatever I don't remember if I said A or B. That's what I mean by like, well, I'm going to make something amazing, or I had an idea and something amazing is going to come of it. The community is what made Mage Tower so successful. It was that people were like banding together and giving each other strats and sharing their success percentages and like what legendaries make them easier, and like the warlock sitting outside of the portals handing people lock rocks saying like congratulations, like get it, you only have a couple weeks left, and like encouraging one another. Like all of that came from the players. It didn't come from the genesis of the design of this. And so like most of its success is actually because the players were so good to each other and had a reason to be good to each other, and like had the opportunity for benevolence. Back to ranting about the design of it. So my task personally was to figure out, okay, well, if we want to give away 36 artifact skins, because there are 36 specs in the game, how can we deliver on this in an amount of time that doesn't mean making 36 individual encounters? Like, or do we want to wait long enough to make 36 individual encounters? And so the first problem I had to solve was like, how can we as a team make a challenging encounter that is just as challenging for a subtlety rogue as it is for a fire mage? Or how does it make sense to cluster these challenges up such that every player has a unique challenge for their artifact? So like if you're a paladin, then you have one challenge for your tank, one for your healer, one for your ret, right? Or if you're a druid, you have one for your balance and one for your feral and one for your resto, and then one for your fourth spec guardian. And so it was just kind of like this problem matrix of, well, the tank and the healer are easy, obviously. You can make one challenge that all the tanks can do. And since nobody has two tank specs, that's super easy. Let's just do that. And then the next problem space, and then like healers the same way, like except for priests who have two healing specs. But there is that leverage that discipline healers have where they can do like more damage ish than holy. But then, so then what do you do if you have one healer challenge? Then what is the discipline priest going to do? And then you have like all the rest of the specs of classes, and you have to say, like, what do these people have in common? Like, how can I design an encounter that is fun for all of the rest of the DPS classes? And I'll need at least two of those because some specs have two or three DPS class, like mages have three DPS class specs. So like that was the initial like plotting down on graph paper what is going on. And so basically the solution there was find out what their DPS profile is. Like, are they good at, spreading out a lot of monsters? Are they good at two target cleave? Are they good at dot? Like, are they a dot class? And how can you make an encounter that makes a dot class feel fucking amazing? And like hopefully we were able to deliver on that and make you feel amazing. But then the next problem space, even okay, so then let's say we gave this to 25 designers, who cares? And then they all individually made their encounter. I think there were actually 8 encounters. So let's say 7 designers, and each one of those designers came back with like the perfect design for an encounter for the number of classes that it was intended for. But then each of those classes were like subtly better at some things than other things. Like some of them are slightly more mobile. Some of them can cast while moving. Some of them um, can mass dispel. Some of them can only single target dispel. There's just like all of these differences that make the classes unique and amazing to play. But then you have to solve for that. So like, what do you do? And like for someone who like Anders, who has done all 36 of the challenges, they know that there's like subtle changes in the encounter that make it. So for example, the tank challenges, there were like these ads that they don't move for
yes. They stay rooted
the
in place for
DK.
some,
Yeah,
right. Yeah. They
because
follow you with others.
Yeah, they stay rooted because DK has an AoE death grip, and I wanted to make AoE death grip feel amazing. And so they're rooted, but they move for the feral druid, or sorry, the guardian druid, because the guardian druid has like AoE root. And so that became more important for the guardian. So then you had to kind of change the design of the monster to make either rooting them in place feel amazing or moving them feel amazing. So there's like very subtle changes like that where like some things are magic immune or some things are, just tuned 50% more difficult. So it just like great movies, I feel like some of the best design just comes from like problem solving and your execution
Yeah.
on solving those problems.
Mhm.
And so by accident, the encounters ended up being pretty good.
Yeah, by total accident. Wow, lucky you guys.
And how did you? I mean, how did you think about balancing them for like, Resto Druid versus Holy Priest in the healer one?
Sure.
Is there like separate sort of rule sets for specs and tuning knobs there, or is it just one size fits all for the healer?
Well, one of the good examples is like with the healer challenge, I wanted to make you care about more than just healing. And so in the first
Mm.
pull, you'll have to like stun this guy or else he'll basically wipe you. Or you'll have to dispel him if you're a different healer. And so like the cadence with which he would recast that was different. So that was how you would like balance for that. Tuning it was actually pretty funny too, because early on we had decided as a team that we would tune these to be enormously difficult at launch. So if it shipped in like 7172, we tuned it for like the max item level of the max tier of like the last tier of the last raid zone. So that it was like still a very good challenge for people who just finished the whole expansion. And then that way people who are super super pro could do it in like negative 50, 60, 70 item levels, right? And so that's how they ended up being tuned the way that they are. And that's difficult too because you're basically trying to like precog what all of the set bonuses are going to be and what all of the trinkets are going to be and what legendaries are going to get
God,
introduced
yeah,
because
yeah.
a lot of that isn't planned many patches in advance. So it was a bit of a gamble. It's hard to do. So you basically just like tune it a little bit extra up just to account for like you can always tune it down, you can never tune it up kind of thing. So some of it didn't. Some of them had like legendaries that let you cheese it, which kind of hurt my feelings. Like it wasn't intended, but at the same time, like some of the people who got their legendary skin were very thankful for being able to cheese it because they wouldn't have gotten to otherwise. So I guess like it's a net positive.
Well, and if you were like one of the tryhards that went and did all 36 of them, you were grateful for the odd freebie, like because some of them were just so fucking brutal. I mean, I had a handful of them that I managed to do on the first clear, but I had several others that like the one that actually took me the most attempts, Storytime, was the Beastmaster Hunter one with the guy in the cavern and the serpent. And I did not have the legs that let you heal while you stood in place. And that was a very like endurance heavy encounter. And then there was like a burst phase and timed interrupts you needed to do near the end. But what ended up making it incredibly difficult for me was I didn't have the one legendary that people were like, if you have this, it's no problem because you remove this one constraint, which is like, can you keep your health up with the couple of cooldowns you have, exhilaration, potion, whatever. And so not having that meant like I felt like I had to play fucking perfectly to finally get that one down. There are probably people who are just like, you're just bad. But that one took me a long time. Whereas with the pants, it would have been a breeze. For other people, maybe that would have been super easy for them. But then if they tried to do the Guardian Druid one without having the thrash,
The loofah.
yeah, the loofah, they would have been fucked, right? You needed that extra range. And
I did the Guardian one without the loofah. I have that appearance. It's
what a
possible.
god. Wow. That's a flex. I have to say. God, I'm starting to get PTSD now thinking about the different stages of the healer encounters and all the dialogue, and you're really bringing it back. And I had forgotten about some of the variable tunings. Like within the healer one, I definitely remember, stuns in the kit was a huge one, and like the damage output that you probably could reasonably deliver during phase one was a big one. Like I remember on Resto Shaman feeling like I could really throw out a lot of damage. And so that part of it was not as bad. But then the last part of it where you've got to heal a couple of those ghosts to full before they get in there, I really struggled with. Versus Holy Priest, which just had so many cooldowns ready to rock during that time period. Or you could just pop, was it Ascendance? I mean, Chris, you would know, and just go into God mode.
Yeah, it was wild because like Resto or Prop Paladin, it could just thrash every other tank in damage because they had this, and it is mostly because of the design of the encounter. Actually, it wasn't because the class was imbalanced inherently. It was just that they have a lot of cooldowns that they can sink at once and then do a lot of front-loaded damage, and then nothing in the encounter lasted long enough for it to matter past that. And so like the Prop Paladin could basically instantly go to phase 3 until it got tuned up by like an enormous amount. And then that feels bad because of the people who don't use those cooldowns and didn't use that specific talent that made the cooldowns amazing were like, this is impossible. It was really hard all around. The tank challenge in particular, I have a lot of regrets, like the design of the tank encounter, because it it kind of it kind of unintentionally became the best defense is a good offense, just because it was a solo encounter. I think if I had the time to do it over, I would have done more like there's more people helping you do DPS, and you are actually being tested more on your ability to tank. You still had to tank and protect a bunch of people, and you still had to mitigate a lot of damage. You had to kick on cooldown. You had to be aware of what was going on in the battlefield, which is like, that's all tank shit, you know? But it did feel bad that you also had to do a ton of DPS, and like a lot of tanks that aren't in top tier guilds have never had the pressure to do a lot of DPS, you know? And so that was new for them. But like the top tier guilds are like, yeah, no, I'm expected to do this kind of damage all the time. Like healers are expected to do 20% of the output of a fucking DPS in, top 200 guilds.
So they were used to weaving it in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was new just to like the vast majority of people, and they're like, this feels like a DPS challenge and not a tank challenge. And to which I say, yep, that sucks. Sorry.
But
again, because if you can kill it fast enough, then you are mitigating that percentage amount of damage over time, right? If you are your own sustenance and your own self-healing, then like a good offense is by far better than a good defense. And so you saw people gearing and gymming for that too, and like that's a huge fail, I think.
So it seems like they're adding, the reason why we're kind of talking about Mage Tower too is because they're adding it back, or they're adding new
it's going to reappear as part of Legion Timewalking, but I don't think we really know any more than that. Like, I don't even know that Blizzard's even said anything, but it's been data mined as a thing in there. So people are buzzing with it's back.
Yeah, I wonder if they're going to add more encounters, because that's always the challenge, right? It's easy it's not easy, but it's easier to kind of scale it up for the max level, but it would be interesting if they added new ones. Like, what would your tips be to the designers if they would add new ones, Candace? Like, what should they think about? And whatnot?
My method of thinking whenever I would go into design one of these is first identify what makes that class feel special, whether it's like self-healing or that some of the utilities that you might have that somebody doesn't have, like Master Spell, or what the thing that you're the best at in the raid. If you're good at AoEing, then of course like and how many targets does that fulfill, and like what are the buttons that you have that you probably don't get to use in raids that feel amazing, like Death Grip, like that doesn't work in a lot of encounters. And so like identify those buttons that people love to push because they feel broken and overpowered, that are basically disabled in the raids, and then amp that up to like 1,000,000. Like make that gameplay, it'll feel fresh, it'll feel amazing, and then they'll feel like, yes, I am special because I am the Death Knight or whatever. Design everything around making those buttons feel amazing. And then 2, make designs that are universal enough that you can tweak an element of it and then suit a different audience. So that sounds really high level, but again, with like you have an ad that does this thing.
Right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Build in knobs for you to turn and to even shut off for some people. Knobs being things like, movement speed of monsters, the recast of an ability, not just like damage and healing raw throughput.
That's one of the main things I learned in working on WoW, is always build in knobs for everything. tuning knobs, so you could easily change something to retain the gameplay experience that you wanted, but then to tune it if like it becomes overpowered or broken
Right.
against class or whatever it is, right?
In encounter design, especially, I'll give you an example of two mechanics that like if this is a bad example of putting in knobs. If you have an ability that has two purposes, and those purposes are like either conflicting or even there's two purposes to an ability. You've basically tied two mechanics to themselves. So an example is like, let's say you need to deal X amount of damage to the raid, or else people don't bring healers. Like that's a very simple version of it. And so the way that you choose to do that is to hurl a projectile at 5 targets every 15 seconds, and it deals 75% of their health or whatever. And you're like, this feels like enough damage to make healers have something to chew on, like popcorn damage is what we call it. But then you also say, okay, and when the projectile hits you, it's going to leave area denial on the floor. Because now what you're doing is like the purpose of that is one, popcorn damage, which is supposed to be kind of like fire and forget. And then the other one is limiting the play space and like essentially making a berserk timer on the encounter. And so you can't dial up the raid damage without also dialing down the amount of time that players have to beat the boss. And so that's why I always advocate for like the purity of purpose of a design. If the purpose is to limit your play space and as such make an artificial enrage timer, then do that, but decouple it from something that's as important as raid damage, right? And you'll see junior designers do that stuff all the time, and it's so hard once it's gone live. Like, well, now either there's going to be no raid damage, or you're going to have to like buff the health of the monster, or like whatever. And so that's what we mean by design with knobs in mind. And the more pure of the purpose you can have in your designs, the more independent that knob is to turn. So
That's such a great way to put it, Candace. Yeah. Night Stalker's asking in chat, was the experience, or sorry, the existence or experience from Proving Grounds relevant for Mage Tower design?
yes, it was very similar in its design where there were finite encounters that more than one class had to take advantage of. I did work with that person a lot, especially when it came to like how do I tune these things, because he was a systems designer who was like a math god. It was Chad.
Chad, yeah.
Yeah. Um, I'm trying to remember the discussions because I do recall getting a lot of nuggets of wisdom passed on to me from Proving Grounds. And I remember putting that in the documentation for every other designer who was working on the artifact challenges. But for the life of me, I can't remember what they were.
What's interesting is, Proving Grounds kind of came from, a pitch. I don't want to say it was my mind, but there's a discussion on the team at the time of, the game is becoming, as you know, what's hard about dungeons is, or the game in general, is just there's such a wide ocean between skill and players. Like the best players who play a rogue just does so much more damage than the lower skilled player. And so we're like, how can we give the player a, safe space essentially to kind of improve and kind of test their skill and get better, right? And that's kind of really where Proving Grounds came in. It was more supposed to be sort of not like an encounter, it turned into sort of a thing where people are doing for achievements and things like that. But it was really supposed to be just kind of the inspiration was from X-Men: The Danger Room, where you're just kind of like playing against, or it's like a training area, right? To like learn your class and get better at healing or damage and stuff like that. And so it was really born out of an idea of just trying to help players learn the game, learn the esoteric nature of tab targeting for dots, or trying to like heal while being some mob chasing you around and stuff like that. And so, but what's interesting always with WoW stuff is it turns into something like that, but then it just evolves into encounters, right? Which is great.
Yep. And then I guess like the last one was don't just test the breadth of somebody's kit. If they have like with the tank one, their kit has like situational awareness, has like kicking, has knowing who's in danger, has picking up ads, all these things. Test the depth of it as well and make sure that like do they know when to pay attention to things? Can they memorize the patterns of attacks? Do they if they're given two choices to make at once, do they know which is good for them? And is that choice different from time to time? Like, is there basically is there always just one right answer to the question, or can there be more than one right answer? And so designing things where there can be more than one right answer makes for a really interesting, meaningful decision from the player. So always give them at least like one viable option, I guess, and that will add depth to your encounter.
Yeah, so I open the floor if anyone has a quick question or comment about the Mage Tower. We're going to do, in future episodes, we'll do a part 2, part 3, where Luca and then I could talk about our own sort of things we design and retrospective. Because it's really great to have the amount of time that Candace has here to
and it's not even nearly enough. I wish I could just
for hours about this.
Be at the other end of a bar right now and just be like ranting to Candace about how fucking much I loved the Mage Tower and how it glued me into WoW, and just like pick your brain about everything, because you've already credited the entire ancillary staff that had to do with everything with the Mage Tower, but like it was just such a goddamn good experience. And it had having everything be limited time and having it be so handcrafted, like all the spec-specific content was in Legion. It felt like one of the sort of alt-friendliest plays Blizzard has really ever made, and not in like the usual sort of... I mean, it was a FOMO collectathon to a degree, but it was really pleasant to do because there was just so much raw learning that had to happen for you to do the collecting on every single spec and class that you wanted to try. It didn't just feel like, ugh, I'm fucking running, same 100 dailies, but I have to do it on the Demon Hunter now, and I have to do it on the this now. It was like you got to strap in and maybe try specs that you had never tried, classes you never tried. I mean, God, I just had so much fun, like trying out classes and specs I had never had any experience with, and like switching my main going into BFA because I was just like, there's so much breadth here, and I think I'm having more fun with some of these others than I'd never given them a go. And overall, yeah, I thought they were really well designed, and they were just like, the way they self-nerfed over time too, with legendary acquisition and how that became easier, and like Antora set bonuses and empowering the artifact weapons, like it was just such a great closer to Legion. And
yeah, so much great actual design in Legion, between that and Mythic Plus and artifacts and all of that. So
I mean, the Mage Tower is probably my fondest set of experiences in World of Warcraft. So
really, wow.
I would say, honestly, like towards the tail end of that is when I started feeling like way more conscious of and interested in like game design and how specs played and everything than I ever had before. And that was around the time that I probably met you too. Like that's when I was sort of like peak clued into WoW, and it was because I was fresh off of having just like played through 36 of these different things, and I was like, yo, this game has a lot in it that I had not experienced before, and I just really cared. It was a good time.
Thank you.
Yeah, so great stuff. I'll never get some of those voice performances out of my head as well, but I'll be really interested to see what they do when they bring it back. In what spirit of it they decide to bring it back. Like new encounters is sort of one question, but could you already ask Chris like what would be improved upon if you were to like bring them back for round 2? Like, do you have any major, besides the tank challenge specifically and the sort of DPS through to skip mechanics, do you have any like pointed regrets you feel like you need to get closure on and share in the open, or not so much? Or what was your favorite challenge maybe? Just like, let's get some other tidbits,
Yeah.
From me, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would love, selfishly, if they were to re-release the Mage Tower, which I say don't do it because FOMO collection was a thing, and if you erase that, then you erased the frenzy that people were in, and then people won't trust Blizzard to do this again, right? Like, the only reason that people got together and encouraged each other and gave each other consumables and like had this amazing community is because they thought that, collectively the people would miss out. And so don't, let me help you so you don't miss out. And so if you bring it back, like, I guess if you don't give the artifact, I mean, they wouldn't give artifact appearances, so it's probably okay. But like, Yeah, it's just really tricky. So, but yeah, if they were to though bring it back and give some other FOMO reward, right? Like, I don't know what would be appropriate for
I've seen
Shadowlands.
these like recolored skins from Legion tier sets that they didn't release the first time. Looks like one thing, and
Or did they just give you something fucking amazing, like more shapeshifts for the druids and like something really specific to your class, like a mount for people who couldn't do it or whatever. So let's pretend that they're bringing it back and they're going to give you another one-time amazing reward. And because production is a thing, they decide to use the same encounters. Selfishly, I would hope that they would use the same encounters because I would love to see some people overcome some of those challenges without those goddamn legendaries. Some of which that like I'm gonna honestly say I didn't know existed. I knew the loofah existed, so I actually made the ring twice as large for tanks.
Yes, you
and
did.
then I like cursory tested it myself, and then maybe the hitbox changed. I don't know what happened, but like it would be fun to see people do it without cheesing it with certain legendaries.
And that's
That would
a
be
good
kinda
point.
cool.
Is just I think the Mage Tower was like heavily kind of tested by UX and things like that, right? And so I'm skeptical if they re-release it and scale it up that they're going to do the diligence that the original had there.
Oh,
So
I completely trust the encounter designers to understand like that. This was not a feat of my brilliance of design. This was all problem solving that any encounter designer could do. I have 100%
right,
faith.
I just mean that they're going to have to they're going to have to spend meaningful amount of time on tuning it, and then how things are. It's
Right,
always a rush, and so
surgically editing, how did classes change? That was also another fun one. Was like I started developing many of these encounters while they were revamping the class. Oh no, it wasn't those encounters. My bad. That was the artifact acquisitions where it's like I made the artifact acquisition need something, and then the class team was like, this class doesn't have that anymore. And I was like, cool, let me go back and redesign this whole thing. Thanks. But classes have changed since Legion, so it'd be really interesting to see
no,
how
yeah,
they
for
would,
sure.
which buttons they would identify as amazing, and
well,
which classes would do which
Survival Hunter.
challenges. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I'm sure people's DPS profiles have changed as well.
Well, and especially post Shadowlands after the great unpruning, there's so much more utility that's spread out back between classes that in these sorts of encounters, which really did call for like your full bag of tricks, I bet a lot of them would be more easily handled.
Really cool avenue that they could go in if they didn't want to reuse the same encounters is making one really specific to your covenant. And then since now you can switch covenants, you can switch and get all the things, right? But then you could make the covenant ability feel amazing, in the same way that like Destiny does when you get a new ability, they like put you in an arena and they give it no cooldown. They're like, go ham, have fun.
Oh, yeah. It's so good.
It's so good. And then you could theme it, heavily towards that covenant. Tell some really cool, like meaningful story or something that you can only see there, like some secret or some video or something. Like I think that's the direction I would go, maybe if I were to be in charge of it.
Okay, just to kind of like push up my glasses and kind of like Star Wars nerd on you here about a few specifics of them. Like, okay, in the Agatha Imp encounter, you were able to use consumables that were meant for the open world, I recall now, because of where the zone was like what it was technically flagged as.
Oh, god damn it.
Right.
I remember
like that must have sucked so hard for you. You could buff up like insanely going into that. So if you're to discover something like that and say it happens in like kind of a timely fashion, like did you want to reauthor any of that stuff? Or did you just say like, well, it belongs to the people now and the imp fights are just going to be a write-off because people can, I don't remember the name of the fucking consumable was, but there were some seriously OP kind of like, oh, you know what it was? It was the one that gave you like the bonus holy damage on your auto attacks, or you just, it was like an elixir of demon slaying type thing. So it was like a huge DPS amp. Did you consider?
Yeah. It's tough because like on one hand you want to be like you done it, you outsmarted me, like good job, you outsmarted the game, because that feels amazing as a player to be like I outsmarted you, I figured out this thing. But then what sucks about it, like I'm actually completely okay with that. That doesn't like hurt the integrity of the encounter at all or like my pride. What I don't like is that it was not evenly applied. Like not everybody had the thing that they could figure out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was unfair that some people felt like they had to work much harder without the crutch of those legendaries or buffs or whatever. I would say like the way that I would go about fixing that would be like, yeah, if you can bulletproof it as bulletproof it as much as frickin' possible. Get more time, maybe like on a PTR or more time to test or something. You're never gonna find all the edge cases, but like I would say release it earlier in the dev cycle because then people could gear up more. So like eventually it could become trivial or not trivial, but like it could become pretty easy. And then everyone had a chance to get it, and so it just becomes a question of like, well, when did you get it? And maybe like the AOTC kind of achievement or whatever. But like you already get the coolness of like the first couple people to beat the Mage Tower got to walk around with those skins that nobody else had, right? And that felt amazing.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, I would say like either implement a system that nerfs it over time story wise and that just makes sense, or release it earlier so that people can eventually like quite literally outgear it. And then those whatever like clever hacks that people did to get the weapon in the first place get to feel special and like clever like hacks, but it doesn't rob from the person who does still want it eventually,
Chris, did you do any of these Mage Towers? I seem to recall you like not being that into them. Do we need to break this out here?
At the time, at the end of Legion, I sort of was turned out. I forgot what I was doing at the time, but probably working on the next expansion or something. So I didn't really like get to do many of them. So maybe if they do re-release it, that would be something they could do.
Check some more of them out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, no Q&As. I don't want to just keep dragging this on just to satisfy my own need to gush. So we'll take the gushing elsewhere. If there's nothing else, I think
people have questions. They can join the next. We'll do part 2, part 3, and you can just table them for next time.
That sounds good to me. It has been a long one. Candace, thank you so much for sharing your insight on this. I'm really excited to see how it comes back and like people getting to experience it again and how it's received. But for those of us that know, we know. Let's just be real, Thanks, everybody, for coming to the show. As always, leave your questions, topic suggestions, just meme with us, chat in the channels for the next week, and we will be back next Wednesday. And I think we'll probably do Chris talking about something or other.
Yeah.
Plenty of time to figure it out. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll see you next week. Chris, there was one thing that you wanted to say.
Later, gamers.
Cool. Bye.